Lawless territory. The Colt revolver in Jace Harmon's hand roared 3 times, each shot precisely placed. The first tore through the chest of a bearded man reaching for his holster. The second caught a rail-thin desperado in the throat, dropping him mid-draw. The third struck the final outlaw between the eyes as he fumbled with a sawed-off shotgun. Smoke hung in the air of the saloon like morning mist over the Arizona desert. 3 bodies sprawled across the sawdust floor. Blood pooled beneath them, seeping between the rough-hewn floorboards. "Should have kept my wife's name out of your filthy mouth," Jace muttered, holstering his peacemaker with practiced precision. The leader had made a fatal mistake, mentioning how Sarah Harmon was probably better off dead than married to a union dog. The barkeep emerged from behind an overturned table, eyes wide with shock. "Jesus Christ, Harmon, you killed all 3 without even standing up." Jace tossed a gold coin on the bar. "For the mess." Outside, the relentless Arizona sun beat down on the dusty street. Jace mounted his chestnut stallion, adjusting the Winchester 73 in its saddle scabbard. The horizon shimmered with heat as he pointed the horse toward his homestead in the foothills. His thoughts drifted to Sarah, gone 5 years now, taken by the fever along with their son. The same fever that had spared him, as if the war hadn't already taken enough. The war. 8 years since Appomattox, and still the memories haunted him. The screams of men dying at Antietam, the blood-soaked fields of Gettysburg, his time as a Union scout slipping behind Confederate lines. Skills that kept him alive then and kept him alive now. Jace had come to Arizona territory seeking solitude. He'd built his ranch with his own hands, a modest affair with good water and enough grazing land for his small herd. He wanted nothing more than to be left alone. The occasional trip to town for supplies was his only connection to what passed for civilization in this harsh land. As the trail narrowed through a rocky passage, Jace's instincts sharpened. Something wasn't right. Scattered pebbles on the path, a broken branch hanging low, fresh hoof prints veering suddenly off the trail. He dismounted, Winchester in hand, and moved silently into the brush. 20 yards in, he spotted her, a small figure huddled against a boulder, barely breathing. A girl no more than 8 years old, Apache by her dress. Blood soaked her side where a bullet had grazed her ribs. The child's eyes fluttered open as his shadow fell across her. Fear replaced pain as she tried to scramble away. "Easy," Jace said, though he knew she likely didn't understand. He set his rifle down slowly and removed his canteen, offering it to her with an open palm. She stared at him, unmoving. "I won't hurt you," he said softly, taking a small sip from the canteen to show it was safe before offering it again. After a long moment, the girl reached for it with trembling hands. Night had fallen by the time Jace carried the unconscious child into his cabin. He laid her gently on his bed and set to work cleaning her wound. The bullet had carved a deep furrow across her ribs, but hadn't penetrated. She'd live if infection didn't set in. As he worked, his mind raced. An Apache child, wounded, miles from any reservation. Someone had shot her, likely white men. Harboring an Apache, even a child, could mean trouble. The kind of trouble that ended with a rope around his neck or a bullet in his skull. Yet as he looked at her small face, peaceful now in sleep, he knew he couldn't have left her to die. Some shreds of humanity had survived the war after all. Jace finished bandaging the wound and covered her with a blanket. He positioned a chair by the window, rifle across his lap, and settled in for a long night. He was dozing when a sound snapped him awake, a soft scrape against the outside wall. Jace moved to the door in 3 silent strides, Winchester at the ready. Moonlight cast long shadows across the yard as he eased the door open and stepped onto the porch. A figure stood at the edge of the light, a woman, tall and proud despite the exhaustion evident in her stance. Her black hair fell in long braids over her shoulders. Blood had dried on her deerskin dress, and a crude bandage wrapped her forearm. Her eyes, dark and fierce, locked onto his. "Where is my daughter?" she asked in accented but clear English. Jace kept his rifle raised. "She's inside. She's hurt, but she'll live." The woman's shoulders sagged slightly with relief, but her gaze remained wary. "I am Nira. The child is Kiona." "Jace Harmon," he replied. "Who shot her?" Nira's expression hardened. "Men who hunt us. White men in blue coats, led by one called Wade." The name hit Jace like a physical blow. Captain Wade Blackwood, the butcher of Shenandoah, a Union officer known for his brutality toward civilians during the war. Rumors had circulated about his involvement in massacres that even the war couldn't justify. "Wade Blackwood?" Jace asked, his voice tight. Surprise flickered across Nira's face. "You know this man?" "I know him." Jace lowered his rifle slightly. "Why is he hunting you?" "He trades in people, Apache people, to Mexico." Her voice remained steady, but rage burned in her eyes. "My husband, Tall Tree, fought when they came to our village. They killed him, took others. Kiona and I escaped." Jace's jaw tightened. Human trafficking. Even in this lawless territory, such activities carried a death sentence. But with Blackwood involved, there would be no justice through official channels. The man had powerful friends in Washington. "You saved my daughter," Nira said, stepping closer. "By Apache tradition, I owe you a life debt. My life is yours now." Jay shook his head. "I don't own people. Never have, never will." "Not ownership," she corrected. "Protection, honor, until the debt is repaid." He studied her for a long moment. "Wade will come looking." "Yes," she agreed. "He will kill us, and anyone who helps us." Jace glanced back at his cabin, thinking of the sleeping child inside. He'd come to Arizona to escape the past, to forget the war and the blood on his hands. Yet here was Wade Blackwood, a ghost from that very past, bringing new horrors to this land. "Come inside," he said finally. "We need to plan." Dawn broke over the mountains as Jace finished laying out spare clothes for Nira and Kiona. He'd found an old shirt and trousers that would disguise Nira's Apache origins at a distance. For Kiona, he'd cut down an old shirt that would serve as a dress. "You'll need to look like settlers if anyone comes," he explained as Nira examined the clothes with skepticism. "And if Wade comes?" she asked. Jace checked his peacemaker, spinning the cylinder with practiced ease. "Then we fight." He spent the morning showing Nira how to handle his second revolver, a Navy Colt he'd carried through the war. Her hands, though smaller than his, were steady and strong. She learned quickly, her aim improving with each shot. "You've used guns before," he observed. She nodded. "My father traded with Mexican hunters. He believed women should know how to fight." She reloaded the revolver with surprising skill. "Tall Tree taught me more. He said knowing many ways to survive is wisdom." Kiona watched from the porch, her dark eyes following every movement. Her wound was healing well, but she remained silent, speaking only to her mother in whispered Apache. That evening, as they sat by the fire, Jace handed Kiona a small wooden figure he'd carved, a horse, rough but recognizable. "For you," he said simply. The girl accepted it cautiously, turning it over in her small hands. A tiny smile, the first he'd seen, flickered across her face before she tucked the figure into her pocket. The next morning, Jace rode into town for supplies and information. The settlement of Cooper's Crossing was little more than a collection of wooden buildings stretched along a single dusty street. The general store, saloon, and sheriff's office formed the heart of what passed for civilization. He tied his chestnut stallion outside the sheriff's office and stepped inside. Mayor Thomas Parker, who doubled as the town's lawman, looked up from his desk. Recognition lit his weathered face. "Jace Harmon," Parker said, standing to shake his hand. Been a while. They'd served together briefly during the war, two scouts in the same regiment. Parker was one of the few men Jace had maintained any contact with afterward. Tom, Jace acknowledged, needs some information. Parker gestured to a chair. What kind? Wade Blackwood. Heard he's operating in the territory. Parker's expression darkened. Bad business, that. Blackwood's got a gang of 6 men riding with him. Former soldiers, mostly. Mean as rattlesnakes. They've been causing trouble up and down the border. What kind of trouble? Parker leaned forward, lowering his voice. Officially, they're hunters. Unofficially, there's talk they're grabbing Apache, claiming they're hostiles, and selling them across the border. Anyone doing anything about it? Parker shrugged. Armies stretch thin. Territorial governors more worried about Apache raids than what happens to Apache prisoners. He studied Jace's face. Why the interest? You never cared much for territorial politics before. Before Jace could answer, the door swung open. Sunlight silhouetted a tall figure wearing a dusty blue cavalry coat. As the man stepped inside, Jace's blood ran cold. Despite the years, he recognized Wade Blackwood immediately. The former captain had aged, lines etched deeper into his face, but his eyes remained the same, cold and calculating. A jagged scar ran from his right temple to his jaw, a souvenir Jace knew had come from a Confederate saber at Cold Harbor. Blackwood didn't give Jace more than a passing glance, focusing instead on Parker. Mayor, he said, voice like gravel, just passing through. Me and my boys will be resupplying, then heading north, tracking a band of renegades. Any trouble we should know about? Parker asked. Blackwood's mouth twisted into something resembling a smile. Nothing we can't handle. Though if you see any Apache in these parts, I'd appreciate being informed, especially a woman and child. Killed 2 of my men last week. Jace kept his expression neutral, though his hand itched to reach for his Colt. Blackwood was lying. Nira and her daughter couldn't have killed 2 grown men. Haven't seen any Apache, Parker said carefully, but I'll keep an eye out. Blackwood nodded and turned to leave, his gaze sweeping over Jace again without recognition. The door closed behind him with a bang that echoed in the sudden silence. Friend of yours? Jace asked, his voice tight. Parker shook his head. Hardly, but he's got authority from the territorial governor. Not much I can do. He gave Jace a searching look. You know him? From the war. Jace stood, adjusting his hat. Thanks for the information. As he stepped outside, Jace caught sight of Blackwood and 2 of his men mounting up outside the general store. He waited until they'd ridden out of town before heading to the store himself. He needed supplies, and he needed them fast. The ride back to the ranch was tense, every shadow potentially hiding Blackwood or his men. As the cabin came into view, Jace's heart sank. The door hung open, swinging gently in the breeze. He approached cautiously, rifle at the ready. Inside, the cabin had been ransacked, furniture overturned, supplies scattered. No sign of Nira or Kiona. A noise from the barn drew his attention. Jace moved silently across the yard, keeping to the shadows. Easing the barn door open, he raised his Winchester. Don't shoot, Nira's voice came from the darkness. We hid when riders came. She emerged from behind a stall, Kiona clutching her hand. Relief washed over Jace, followed immediately by anger. Parker, he growled. He must have told Blackwood where to find me. They searched but did not find us, Nira said. They will return. Not here, they won't, Jace decided. Grab what you can carry. We're heading into the hills. By nightfall, they'd reached a defensible position in the rocky foothills. A small cave provided shelter, with clear lines of sight in all directions. Jace set about creating simple traps and alarms, tripwires with tin cans, balanced rocks that would fall noisily if disturbed. As he worked, Nira built a small fire deep in the cave where the light wouldn't be visible from outside. Kiona huddled near the warmth, watching Jace with solemn eyes. "Why do you help us?" Nira asked as Jace returned to the cave. "You risk your life for strangers." Jace checked his weapons before answering. "Blackwood's a monster. I saw what he did during the war. Whole families slaughtered because he claimed they were Confederate sympathizers." His jaw tightened. "I had a chance to stop him then. Didn't take it. Won't make that mistake twice." "You were a soldier together?" "I was a scout. I reported to him briefly." Jace's voice turned bitter. "Watched him order the execution of civilians, women, children. When I reported it, nothing happened. He had protection from above." Nira was silent for a moment. "My husband fought when they came. Tall Tree was a warrior, but they shot him as he reached for his knife." Her voice remained steady, but her eyes reflected the firelight like polished obsidian. "I ran with Kiona while others fought. Some were taken, some were killed." "How many men ride with Blackwood?" Jace asked. "6 now, 7 before." A ghost of a smile touched her lips. "I killed one when we escaped, with his own knife." Jace nodded with newfound respect. "Tomorrow we'll set more traps. They'll come searching, but they won't know these hills like we do." "You know Apache ways," Nira observed. "How to move, how to hide." "Learned from Apache scouts during the war," Jace admitted. "Best fighters I ever saw. Taught me how to survive." For the first time, Kiona spoke in English, her voice small but clear. "Will you kill the bad men?" Jace met her gaze across the fire. "Yes," he answered honestly. "So they can't hurt anyone else." She nodded satisfied and leaned against her mother. That night, as Nira and Kiona slept, Jace kept watch from the mouth of the cave. Stars scattered across the sky like spilled diamonds. In the distance, a coyote called, its lonesome howl echoing through the canyons. He thought of Sarah, of the life they'd planned together, of the son he'd barely known. Somehow, in helping Nira and Kiona, he felt closer to them than he had in years, as if protecting this mother and child might atone for failing to protect his own family. Dawn had barely broken when the first alarm sounded. Tin cans rattling somewhere down the hillside. Jace touched Nira's shoulder gently, and she was instantly alert, reaching for the Navy Colt beside her. "They're coming," he whispered. "Stay with Kiona. I'll draw them out one by one." Nira shook her head. "I will take position on the ridge. Better angle." Before he could protest, she had strapped on the gun belt and was moving silently toward the back exit of the cave, a small opening that led to higher ground. "Kiona," she whispered, and the girl nodded, pressing herself deeper into the shadows of the cave. Jace positioned himself behind a boulder with a clear view of the approach. Through his field glasses, he counted 5 riders. Blackwood and 4 of his men. They'd split up, advancing from different directions. The first man fell to one of Jace's traps, a deadfall of rocks that crushed his leg. His scream echoed through the canyon before a shot from Jace's Winchester silenced him permanently. The second died, never knowing what hit him. He was checking the body of his companion when Nira's shot took him through the base of the skull, a clean kill that would have impressed even veteran soldiers. The remaining 3 scattered, taking cover among the rocks. Gunfire erupted, bullets whining off stone as Jace ducked behind his boulder. For nearly an hour, the battle continued, a deadly game of hide-and-seek among the rocks. Jace managed to wound a 3rd man, who dragged himself behind a ridge and didn't emerge again. Then silence fell. No movement, no gunfire. "Harmon!" Blackwood's voice echoed from somewhere to the east. "I know it's you. Parker told me you'd gone soft. Harboring Apache savages now?" Jace didn't respond, shifting position silently, working his way closer to Blackwood's voice. "I recognized you in town, you know," Blackwood called. "The righteous scout who tried to get me court-martialed. How'd that work out for you?" Jace moved from boulder to boulder, keeping low. He could see one of Blackwood's remaining men now, scanning the rocks nervously. "I've got the girl, Harmon," Blackwood suddenly shouted. "Show yourself or she dies." Jace's blood ran cold. He looked toward the ridge where Neri had been positioned, but couldn't see her. "I don't believe you, Wade," he shouted back. "Believe this." A child's scream pierced the air. Kiona's voice filled with terror. Somehow Blackwood or his man had circled around and found the back entrance to the cave. Jace moved fast, working his way toward the sound. As he rounded a boulder, he caught sight of them. Blackwood standing on a flat area of rock, holding Kiona by the arm. His remaining man stood nearby, rifle at the ready. "Drop your weapon, Harmon," Blackwood ordered, "or I put a bullet in her head right now." Jace stepped into the open, Winchester lowered but not dropped. "Let her go, Wade. Your quarrel's with me." Blackwood's scarred face twisted into a grin. "My quarrel's with anyone who gets in my way, including Apache brats and washed-up scouts." He pressed his pistol against Kiona's temple. "The gun. Now." Slowly, Jace bent to place his rifle on the ground. As he straightened, a flash of movement caught his eye. Nera, advancing silently from behind Blackwood, a knife in her hand. "You know what the army would say if they knew what you were doing?" Jace asked, keeping Blackwood's attention on him. "Selling people, women, children. The army doesn't care what happens to savages," Blackwood spat. "Never did. There's good money in Mexico for healthy Apache, even better for pretty ones." He tightened his grip on Kiona, making her whimper. "Is that how you justified the massacre at Shenandoah?" Jace pressed, needing to buy Nera more time. "Those were white folks, American citizens." "They were traitors," Blackwood snarled, his face flushing with anger. "Just like you turned traitor when you reported me." His eyes narrowed dangerously. "I lost my commission because of you, lost everything, but I built it back, made new connections, and now I'm going to watch you die, knowing you failed to save anyone. Just like you failed to save your wife and son." The taunt struck deep, but Jace forced himself to stay focused. "And after me? More villages? More families torn apart? When does it end, Wade?" "It ends when I say it ends," Blackwood growled. "Now on your knees, or the girl dies first." Jace saw Nera freeze as Blackwood's companion began to turn, alerted by some sound. In that instant, Jace made his decision. He dropped to one knee, drawing his peacemaker in a single fluid motion. Two shots rang out almost simultaneously. Blackwood's bullet grazed Jace's shoulder. Jace's shot struck Blackwood's companion in the chest, dropping him instantly. Blackwood swung his gun toward Jace, but the momentary distraction was all Nera needed. She lunged forward, bearing her knife in Blackwood's side. He roared in pain, releasing Kiona to swing at Nera with the butt of his pistol. The blow caught Nera across the temple, sending her sprawling. Blackwood staggered, blood seeping from his side, and aimed his gun at her prone form. "No!" Kiona screamed, throwing herself at Blackwood's legs. Blackwood kicked her aside savagely, his boot connecting with her small body. "I'll deal with you next," he snarled, steadying his aim at Nera. Time seemed to slow as Jace raised his peacemaker. 3 rapid shots erupted from the barrel. The first struck Blackwood's shooting arm. The second punched through his chest. The third, the kill shot, hit him squarely between the eyes. The former captain stumbled backward, disbelief etched on his features, before toppling over the edge of the rock ledge. His body tumbled down the slope, coming to rest in a broken heap 30 feet below. Silence fell, broken only by the distant cry of a hawk circling overhead. Jace rushed to Nera, who was struggling to sit up, blood streaming from her temple. Kiona reached her first, small hands clutching at her mother's dress. "Mama!" Nera embraced her daughter with one arm, her other hand pressed against her bleeding head. Her eyes met Jace's. "You kept your promise." Jace nodded, holstering his pistol. We need to get that wound cleaned. 3 days later, they returned to the ranch. Blackwood and his men were dead, their bodies left for the vultures. Mayor Parker had sent a rider with news that the territorial marshal was investigating Blackwood's operation. Apparently, Parker had suspected the truth about Blackwood's activities for some time, but lacked proof. "I didn't betray you," Parker's letter explained. "I knew Blackwood would follow you. Figured you could handle him better than anyone else. Sorry I couldn't warn you first." Jace wasn't sure he believed that, but with Blackwood dead, it hardly mattered now. The cabin had been ransacked, but the structure was sound. Together, he and Nira set about cleaning and repairing. Kiona, her natural resilience asserting itself, explored the corral where Jace kept his horses. Over the next few weeks, a routine developed. Jace taught Kiona how to care for the horses, how to read the tracks of animals, how to speak English more fluently. The child absorbed everything eagerly, her quiet demeanor gradually giving way to occasional smiles and questions. "Why do horses need special shoes?" she asked one morning as Jace reshod his chestnut stallion. "To protect their hooves on hard ground," he explained, demonstrating how the iron shoe fit. "Just like you need boots for the rocky hills. Can I learn to make horseshoes?" "When you're bigger," he promised. "For now, you can learn to ride better." That evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Nira turned to Jace. "Kiona asks about you," she said quietly. "She wants to know if you will stay with us always." Jace met her gaze. "What did you tell her?" "That I do not know what is in your heart." Nira's eyes searched his face. "The debt is not repaid." "There is no debt," Jace insisted. "There is," she countered firmly. "You saved Kiona twice. You avenged my husband. In my tradition, these are life debts." Jace was silent for a long moment. "Stay if you want," he said finally. "Not because of any debt, because you choose to." For the first time, Nira smiled, a genuine expression that transformed her face. "I choose to." Their hands found each other's in the gathering darkness, fingers intertwining. Not from passion or romance, but from something deeper, a connection forged in survival and mutual respect. As autumn turned the aspen leaves golden on the mountainsides, Jace and Nira began construction on an addition to the cabin, a new room for Kiona, with windows facing east toward the sunrise. The girl helped as she could, carrying small stones for the foundation, watching intently as Jace taught her how to mix mortar. "Strong house," she said approvingly as the walls took shape. "Like strong family." Jace paused in his work, the simple words striking deeper than she could know. Family. He hadn't allowed himself to think in those terms for years. One crisp October morning, Jace took Kiona hunting, teaching her to move silently through the forest, to read the signs of deer and rabbit. She proved a natural tracker, spotting details that even Jace sometimes missed. "My father would teach me this," she said suddenly as they followed a deer trail, "before bad men came." Jace glanced down at her. "Your father was a brave man. Tall tree." She nodded solemnly. "Mother says you are brave too. Like him." That evening as they sat by the fire, Kiona curled up beside Jace as he carved another wooden figure, this time a wolf. Her eyes grew heavy, her small body relaxing against his side. "Achi," she murmured sleepily. Jace looked to Nira questioningly. "Father," she translated softly. "She calls you father." Something tightened in Jace's chest. Not pain, but a fullness he hadn't felt in years. He gently stroked Kiona's hair as she drifted to sleep. The following spring, as new life returned to the land, Jace and Nira were married, not in a church or by a judge, but in a simple ceremony combining Apache traditions with frontier practicality. Mayor Parker stood witness, along with a few trusted neighbors who had come to accept the unusual family. "Never thought I'd see the day," Parker said afterward, clapping Jace on the shoulder. You found something worth fighting for again. Summer brought the completion of the enlarged cabin in a bountiful garden that Nira tended with skilled hands. Kiona grew taller, stronger, dividing her time between learning Apache ways from her mother and frontier skills from Jace. On one evening as they stood on the hill overlooking their home, Jace pointed to distant mountains. That range marks the boundary of our land now. I filed the papers last week. 500 acres, all legal and recorded. Nira's eyes widened. So much land. Room to grow, Jace replied. Room for cattle, horses, maybe more family someday. She took his hand, her fingers warm against his. Land needs a name. Jace considered this. In Apache tradition, how would you name it? After what matters most, she answered. What gives it meaning? Jace gazed down at their homestead, the solid cabin with smoke rising from the chimney, the corral where horses grazed peacefully, the garden where Kiona was gathering vegetables for dinner. This place that had once been merely his refuge from the past was now something more. Hope Valley, he said finally, because that's what I found here, what we built together. Nira nodded, satisfaction in her eyes. A good name, strong like our family. As they walked down the hill toward home, Kiona ran to meet them, her face bright with excitement over some new discovery. Jace lifted her easily onto his shoulders, her small hands gripping his hat for balance. Look, she pointed toward the western sky where the sun was setting in brilliant gold. Our land, our home. Yes, Jace agreed, feeling Nira's hand slip into his. Our home,